Is it happening? Do I finally get to talk about a series that I like? Hello everyone, this is Callimara here, and no, it's not calamari. Welcome back to my channel, or if you want to join the pond, go ahead and take a dive. You might like it here. Yes, if you've read the title, today we will be redesigning Twilight Sparkle from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. But we're not just going to be doing one Twilight. Oh no, we are going to be redesigning all three forms that Twilight adopts throughout the series. Though, only the pony forms. Perhaps I can do her Equestria Girls form in another video if you're interested. Now, my reason for redesigning Twilight is not because I dislike her appearance and think I can do better. Well, maybe for one of her forms, but we'll get into that a bit more later. I'm making this video because I love MLP, and I love the art style that they chose for it and have a lot of fun drawing with it. Fun fact about me, I was actually a horse girl growing up and would consume any horse-related media. Obviously, my favorite movie at the time was Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, but I also watched the cartoons and movies that were released for the older generations of MLP from Generation 2 to 3. Actually, I'm pretty sure I watched all of them because I was that obsessed. I think I had a few ponies of my own as well, though I've long since lost them. That's to say, I was already familiar with a few of the characters that would become the main characters in Generation 4. And by some, I mostly meant Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie, who took on pretty central roles in Generations 2 and 3 as well. Rainbow Dash's character change in Gen 4 specifically was pretty drastic, but that's a topic for another day. Today, we are talking about Twilight Sparkle and Generation 4 of My Little Pony. If you want to create a show-accurate MLP pony, there are several different body types that get reused throughout the series for different characters that you can use. There is the basic type, which applies for most characters, including the main 6, though there are subtle differences between mares and stallions. Mares tend to be smaller, rounder, and have smaller upturned snouts, whereas stallions tend to be bigger, sleeker, and have straight, sharp-angled snouts. There are also body types specifically for foals and fillies and babies, and sex-exclusive body types. Mare-exclusive body types include the tall, slim type, which is used for the princesses like Luna and Cadence, but also certain background characters like Sassy Saddles. There are also unique mare body types which are used exclusively for one character, like the round short type for Mrs. Cake and what I like to call "This is no longer a pony, nay, 'tis a horse" for Celestia. There are also non-pony but still an equine designs, as we see for Zecora and Matilda. For stallion-exclusive body types, there is the tall, strong body type, which we see used for Shining Armor, Bright Mac, and most of the Royal Guards. This body type is distinctive for its visible hooves. The tall, skinny body, as seen on Cheese Sandwich and Zephyr Breeze. A draft horse body type that is unique to Big Mac, and of course, non-pony but still an equine like Cranky Doodle Donkey, who is a donkey. Try playing around with these different body types for your pony OCs. When selecting color palettes for your OCs, make sure to limit the colors to 5 colors or less if you want to be show accurate. Now, Twilight's debut form is a unicorn with a basic mare body type, but I want to modify it slightly to make the different types of ponies more distinct. For unicorns like Twilight, I wanted to lean more into the classical unicorn design, where they are portrayed as very dainty and slender with tufted tails. I definitely want my unicorns to look ethereal and magical, but not necessarily suitable for manual labor, like riding or pulling carriages, because they rely so much on their magic. Kind of in the D&D wizard class sort of way. So I'm making Twilight more willowy and sleek, and another thing I've always wanted to do that I know probably wouldn't be practical in the show was give them different types of coat patterns. For Twilight, I took inspiration from Appaloosa horses because there is one particular coat pattern that I thought would be perfect for Twilight. What I will be doing is integrating her cutie mark a bit more with the rest of her coat by creating a backdrop of a dusk sky for her starry cutie mark. There is a type of pattern called a blanket pattern, which is a white blanket that covers the horse's hips and loins, which may have spots within it that are the same color as the base coat. Usually this blanket is a white color on Appaloosas, and while I think having a white blanket looks really nice on Twilight, I realized, perhaps a bit too late, that Twilight's cutie mark also has a lot of white components to it that would disappear. Initially, I thought about placing spots strategically where the white sparkles were to help them stand out, but in the end, I think it made it look too busy and actually muddled the cutie mark too much. So I resorted to changing around the colors of her cutie mark to help it stand out against the white backdrop, but it still didn't really stand out the way I'd hoped. Alternatively, I colored the blanket navy. It helped her cutie mark stand out with its natural colors, but the problem was that it looked too similar to Luna's flank, which already has a similar concept going on, and it felt a bit too disconnected from the rest of her design color-wise. However, I was very fond of how it did end up looking like a galaxy, so I wanted to keep trying. I struggled around with this for a while until I decided to color in Twilight's tail with the same navy color, and it just clicked everything together for me. But still, I thought the white blanket had potential, so I kept trying to play around a bit more with that as well, taking more liberties with a more pastel color scheme, and in the end, I settled on a compromise. To go along with her starry sky theme, someone in my Discord server suggested I give Twilight starry freckles, and I loved that idea, so I decided to add it as well. Let me know what you think. I think it makes Twilight look more magical and ties in better with her sky theming, which foreshadows her ascension to an alicorn later on. And speaking of her alicorn form, let's get into that now. But before we get into the redesign, I'd like to tell you about this video sponsor, Factor 75. Factor 75 is a weekly meal delivery service that brings delicious, nutritious, dietitian-curated and chef-prepared meals right to your doorstep. It's like ordering takeout, but better because Factor meals arrive pre-prepared and ready to eat in 2 minutes or less, even faster than ordering in, and meal plans offer variety with a rotating weekly menu of 34 plus meal options and 36 plus add-ons like smoothies, keto shakes, desserts, and more. Factor 75 is great if you're like me and you also tend to forget to feed yourself because you've been drawing for 8 hours straight. Factor even offers meals for those looking to follow keto, low-calorie, or vegan and vegetarian lifestyles. And yes, this does mean that Factor can also help you reach your fitness/wellness goals if you have to adhere to a specific diet. Between my full-time internship and doing YouTube videos, it's really hard to maintain a healthy diet because I just end up eating instant noodles or random assortments of snacks someone happens to bring to the office one day. So Factor 75 is the perfect answer to my plight because I just need to open up my fridge and boom, I have a healthy, fulfilling meal already waiting for me that I can take to the office or just eat at home. Get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life using my link. This means you can choose 2 free wellness shots from 3 available flavors for every order while you are an active subscriber. Click on the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. And now back to the video. In Season 4, Twilight is crowned Equestria's newest princess, which transforms her into an alicorn. So let's play around with her alicorn form. I will be adding an additional color because you can't have a Twilight without a bit of yellow, which I think will really contrast against the pink and purple. I also wanted to give her feathers in some way to better integrate her Pegasus wings, and I decided the best way to do that was by replacing the hairs on her tail with feathers. If I end up redesigning the other main 6 characters, I'd also like to carry these traits over to the Pegasus characters. I will also be making Twilight slightly taller because I noticed that after becoming an Alicorn, Twilight actually gets a little bit taller than her friends. It also makes it easier for her to transition to her final form later on in the series finale. This new form of Twilight's was actually quite controversial when it first debuted, and I think it still is to this day. It created a divide in the fandom at the time, with some loving the change and some hating it. I actually remember this announcement, and I personally was in the camp of loving it. I was super excited that Twilight became an Alicorn because I thought she looked really pretty and cool, and oh my gosh, I love ponies so much. And to me, it felt like a natural progression for the story, presenting new challenges and shifts in the dynamic to keep things interesting. But also, I just liked self-indulgent designs, okay? Even if it didn't make sense narratively, I still would have liked the design. But for the camp of people that dislike the change, the main argument being had was that it went against Lauren Faust's original vision for the show, or that Twilight changed too much after becoming an Alicorn and it changed the dynamic of the friendship. But there are several versions of this rumor. Some have said that Lauren Faust never wanted Twilight to become an Alicorn, just that she would become Celestia's successor, and that the only reason they made Twilight an Alicorn was to sell more toys, which, in their defense, and not to be a corporate shill or anything, My Little Pony is a toy line first, and the only reason the show exists was to sell their new generation of toys, as they always have. People, particularly on 4chan, even called it a glorified commercial when the show was first announced, while lamenting the death of originality and artistic integrity that Lauren Faust would stoop so low. It just turned out to be not as bad as people were expecting. Good, even. And fun fact, these 4chaners who initially tuned in and liked the show ironically or just tuned in to hate watch would also go on to become the first bronies, hence the disproportionately high audience of grown men that often overshadows the actual target audience of little girls, and also explains a lot of the really weird fan art around MLP. But I get it. It's always sad when an artist has to compromise their vision because of corporate intervention, and I understand the frustration. But another version claims that Lauren actually wanted to save Twilight getting her wings for the finale, and that she only planned for 3 seasons with Twilight becoming an Alicorn in the finale. But given how successful the show was, more seasons were ordered and produced, and now in retrospect, it felt as though Twilight got her wings far too early. Which, again, speaks on corporate greed and not being able to stop milking a cash cow until it is completely dried up and long past its time. Fairly Odd Parents. The general consensus, though, was that Twilight's character and relationship dynamic with her friends changed for the worst after becoming an Alicorn, becoming more reserved and shy and stressed with the new responsibilities and expectations imposed upon her, and consequentially creating a power gap between her and her friends, which changes their relationship significantly. And I think if you initially come to a show because you like a certain character's personality or the dynamic they have with other characters and the story goes in a direction where it changes, it's going to be disappointing, especially if you don't enjoy the direction they're taking as much. But I do think that for the direction that the story was going, the changes make sense. Twilight is being thrust into a position almost no one in their lifetime will ever get to be in, with momentous responsibility on her shoulders. It's a lot of pressure, it's very uncertain, and Twilight has always been a perfectionist who is super hard on herself. She had less pressure as just a student of Celestia's being sent to Ponyville to learn about friendship, and she was still hard on herself then, and becoming a princess forced her to mature a lot faster. I think the changes in character to reflect her response to this new form, position, and power makes sense. But just because it makes sense doesn't mean it'll be enjoyable for everyone. So I think it's completely fair to lose interest in the show because of that too. And in regards to the change in power dynamics within the friend group, this actually gets addressed in the show itself, with Twilight having trouble adjusting to her new castle and being afraid that she would lose her friends because she was a princess now, and her friends not being sure how to address her because she's a princess now. And they work it out by talking with each other, setting healthy boundaries and expectations, and I really appreciate that. But what I don't appreciate is Twilight's castle. I am one of the people that think the library was far superior, much more cozy and appealing than this giant, sharp, cold, pointy, barren playhouse. Like, it looks like a dead tree. Not inviting at all. They could have at least kept it an actual tree and added actual leaves and flowers instead of just painting it onto the castle walls. But I don't know. This is how I would have liked it to look. Let me know what you think of Twilight's Alicorn design in the comments below. I was really pleased with how this design turned out, and I especially loved how her wings looked like the night sky. I thought that was a very nice touch, and it played really well into her starry freckles. And now, let's move on to Twilight's final form. Just like Twilight's Alicorn form, this Celestia form, let's call it, was also quite divisive. And while I liked Twilight's original Alicorn form, I thought this one was taking it a bit too far and personally always looked a bit off to me. If I had to describe what it was, among other things, it had to be how jarringly drastic the change is for such a short amount of time. I feel like I would be much more accepting of this form if we saw it thousands of years into the future, when Twilight is as old as Celestia was when the story takes place, as opposed to only 10, 15 years. Because all of Twilight's friends are still alive, and while they're all older, they're not that old. So it couldn't have been that long of a time skip. I think it would have made more sense for Twilight to have grown into the tall, slim body type in that time period, like Princess Cadance did, as opposed to a full Celestia form. But, you know, I can try and make it work. Another thing is that they kept Twilight's exact eye shape and size and just pasted it onto Celestia's body. And in my opinion, it's too disproportionately big for Celestia's body type. The reason Celestia's eyes work is because proportionally, they're actually smaller than the other ponies' eyes relative to the size of their heads. But another big thing is that she isn't constantly bulging her eyes out like Twilight does. Her eyelid posture is much more relaxed, making her seem much more regal and composed. I also think that they translated Twilight's mane quite poorly in this form. Specifically, I didn't like how they made her signature blunt fringes longer and sideswept, but not really that long, and not really integrating it that well with the rest of her mane. It just looks kind of awkward and takes away so much from her signature look without really giving her a new look. It's like they wanted to do both at the same time and ended up with neither. So for my redesign, I am definitely still keeping her signature blunt bangs and hime cut. I just personally see this part of Twilight's hair as a hime cut, and I think it would be the perfect touch to help maintain her signature look while still having a more ethereal flowing mane, similar to what Luna and Celestia have, if so desired, which I do indeed desire. I also wanted to keep the feather tail that Twilight gained from her Alicorn transformation, so I just translated it to a longer, flowing form that fits the same vibe as her current one while still looking balanced. In this final form, I integrated more of the yellow and the stars and sparkles into her design, really helping her come into her full twilight potential. Let me know what you think of my Twilight redesigns in the comments below, and if you want to see more MLP redesigns. Thank you so much to Factor75 for sponsoring this video, and thank you so much to you guys for hanging out in my channel for a while. I hope your skin didn't get too pruny. Big shout out to my lovely pond dwellers on Patreon. If you want to become a pond dweller and get early access to my content, join my Patreon. If you want to see more from me, then please follow me on all my social media. If you want to submit fan art or chat with me, join my Discord server. And if you want more of my stories, check out my Wild Word series here on YouTube because that will make me really happy. All the links are in my description, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!